The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Dr. Una Park stepped into the Galactic Council space station for the first time. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Earth had finally been accepted into the galactic community, and she was here to represent her entire species. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders, but right now, everything else felt strangely light. Her first step was too strong. She bounced upward, arms flailing slightly before she caught herself. Behind her, Commander Jaewon Kim stifled a laugh. He had the same problem. They had trained for low gravity, but training and reality were very different things. The station was enormous. Curved walls stretched in every direction, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own soft light. Alien beings moved through the corridors, tall and thin like willow trees, their movements graceful and flowing. They made Una feel short and clumsy and heavy. Ambassador Hyerin Lee was waiting for them at the entrance to the main corridor. She had been on the station for 3 months already, preparing for Earth's formal admission to the Council. She looked tired. Her smile seemed forced. "Welcome," Hyerin said quietly. "Remember what we practiced. Move slowly. Be gentle with everything. They break easily here." Una nodded. She had read all the briefings. The station operated at 0.4 Earth gravity. Most species in the Galactic Council came from worlds with even less gravity than that. They had evolved in gentle environments where falling meant drifting softly downward, where bones could be light and delicate, where strength was measured differently. They walked through the corridors toward the council chamber. Una tried to move carefully, but everything felt wrong. Her muscles expected resistance that wasn't there. Each step wanted to become a jump. Her arms swung too wide. She felt like a bull in a shop full of glass. Other beings watched them pass. Some stared openly. Others whispered to each other, their translators murmuring in languages Una couldn't identify. She heard the word Death Worlders more than once. It wasn't said kindly. The council chamber was breathtaking. A massive circular room with a transparent dome overhead showing the stars. Hundreds of seats arranged in curved rows, each occupied by a delegate from a different world. And in the center, a raised platform where speakers would stand. Una and Jaewon followed Hyerin to the Earth section. 3 seats, small and isolated in one corner. New members always sat at the edges, Hyerin had explained. They had to earn their place toward the center. As Una sat down, the chair creaked. It was loud in the quiet chamber. Dozens of alien heads turned to look at her. She felt her face grow hot. The chair had been built to Earth specifications, but it still sounded too loud, too heavy, too wrong in this place. The session began. A being that looked like a collection of floating crystals called the chamber to order. Its voice came through Una's translator as soft chimes. "We welcome the newest member of our community, the representatives of Earth. May they find wisdom in our fellowship." There was polite clicking and humming from around the chamber. The alien equivalent of applause, Una guessed. The session proceeded. Various delegates gave reports on trade agreements, scientific discoveries, territorial disputes. Una tried to follow along, but the translator sometimes struggled with technical terms. She took notes on her data tablet, tapping carefully on the screen. Too carefully. She wasn't used to the low gravity affecting her fine motor control. Her finger came down harder than she intended. The tablet flew out of her hand, spinning through the air in a slow arc. Jaewon caught it before it hit the ground, but the damage was done. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not human laughter, but chirps and whistles and sounds that her translator marked as amusement. A delegate several rows away stood up. He was tall and thin with skin that shimmered like oil on water. His name appeared on Una's translator. Ambassador Thelnara of Viridian Prime. "Perhaps," Thelnara said, his voice dripping with barely concealed mockery. "Our new members need time to adjust to civilized gravity. We wouldn't want them to break anything important with their excessive muscle density." More laughter. The crystal being that was chairing the session made a sound that the translator interpreted as gentle reprimand, but did nothing to stop the mockery. Una felt herself shrinking in her seat. Beside her, Jaewon's jaw was tight. Even Hyerin looked down at her hands, saying nothing. The session continued, but Una barely heard it. She was too aware of every movement she made. When she shifted in her seat, it creaked again. When she reached for her water container, she nearly crushed it. When another delegate passed by and offered a formal greeting gesture, she shook their hand too hard. They pulled away with a wince, cradling their delicate fingers. By the time the session ended, a new nickname was spreading through the station. She heard it whispered in corridors, saw it in the way aliens moved aside when humans approached. The heavy ones. Not said with respect, said like a joke. That evening, Una sat alone in her quarters. The room was small but comfortable, built to Earth specifications with full gravity. It was the only place on the station that felt normal. She could walk without bouncing, sit without worrying about breaking furniture, move without feeling like a clumsy giant. On her desk sat a simple ballpoint pen. She had brought it from Earth, a small piece of home. It was nothing special, just a cheap plastic pen she had used for years. But here on this station it felt different. It felt heavy, dense, solid in a way that everything else on the station was not. She picked it up, feeling its familiar weight in her hand. On Earth it was barely noticeable. Here it felt substantial. She set it down on the desk and watched it. In the low gravity of the station, it would float if she dropped it, drift down like a feather, but in Earth gravity in her quarters it fell like it was supposed to. Quick and solid and real, there was a knock at her door. Hiren entered without waiting for an answer. The older woman looked exhausted. She sat down heavily in the chair across from Yuna's desk. "I know today was difficult," Hiren said. "It gets easier, does it?" Yuna asked. "Or do we just get used to being laughed at?" Hiren was quiet for a moment. "They don't understand us. They think strength is a flaw. They think our engineering is primitive. They've never had to build something that could survive real gravity. Should we show them?" Yuna asked. "Demonstrate what we can do?" "No." Hiren's voice was firm. "We can't afford to appear aggressive. Not now. Earth needs this alliance. We need access to their technology, their knowledge, their trade routes. We can't risk it just because our pride is hurt." She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "Give it time, Yuna. Eventually they'll see we have value, just not the way we expected." After Hiren left, Yuna sat in the quiet of her quarters. She picked up the pen again, holding it up to the light. Such a simple thing. On Earth, meaningless. Here it felt like the heaviest thing in the universe. She didn't know it yet, but that pen would change everything. A week passed on the station and things did not get easier. Every day brought new small humiliations. Yuna learned to move more carefully, but careful movements looked slow and stupid to the graceful aliens. She learned to grip things more gently, but that meant dropping things more often. There was no winning. The other human delegates weren't doing any better. Dr. Minho Choi, Earth's chief engineer, had accidentally bent a door handle on his first day. Captain Soman Han, the military attaché, had broken 3 chairs before she learned to sit down with extreme care. They were all trying their best, but their best looked clumsy and crude to everyone watching. Today was the Technology Demonstration Day. Once a month, the Galactic Council held a session where member species could present their latest innovations. It was a chance to share knowledge, attract research partners, and show off what made each civilization special. Earth had been preparing for this for months. It was their chance to prove they belonged here, that they had something valuable to offer beyond raw materials and manual labor. Yuna sat in the demonstration hall with the other humans. The room was huge, with a central stage and viewing screens all around. Delegates from dozens of species filled the seats, chattering in their various languages while translators hummed quietly in the background. The presentations began. A species from the Andari cluster showed off a new energy shield design. It was beautiful to watch, shimmering fields of light that could deflect particle beams while using almost no power. The crowd made appreciative sounds. Next, a civilization from the Outer Rim presented a biological computer that could grow itself from a single cell. It learned and adapted and required no external power source. Delegates leaned forward in their seats, fascinated. A group from the Tethys system demonstrated a quantum drive that could fold space without generating dangerous radiation. It was elegant, efficient, and completely beyond anything Earth could currently build. Each presentation was met with enthusiastic responses. Questions were asked, partnerships were proposed, research grants were discussed. This was what the Galactic Council was supposed to be about. Species working together, learning from each other, building a better future. Then it was Earth's turn. Minho walked onto the stage, trying not to look nervous. Behind him, large screens lit up with images of Earth technology. Buildings, bridges, vehicles, power plants. all the things humanity had built to survive on their world. "Thank you for this opportunity," Minho began. His voice sounded too loud through the translator, too rough compared to the musical tones of the previous speakers. "Earth would like to present our advances in structural engineering and high-density material science." The screens showed detailed plans for reinforced concrete, steel frameworks, foundation systems that could support massive weights, suspension bridge designs that could span kilometers, skyscrapers that could withstand high winds and seismic activity. The audience was quiet. Too quiet, Minho continued, explaining the principles behind human engineering: load-bearing walls, stress distribution, redundant safety systems. He talked about how human buildings were designed to last centuries, how bridges could carry weights that would be unthinkable on most worlds. When he finished, there was polite clicking. The bare minimum of acknowledgement. An alien scientist named Velkoth stood up. He was from a world with only 0.2 Earth gravity. His body was so thin he looked like he might blow away in a strong breeze. "A question, if I may," Velkoth said. His translator made his voice sound tired and bored. "Of course," Minho replied. "Why would anyone need structures that can withstand such enormous forces?" Velkoth gestured at the images on the screen. "This seems unnecessarily robust. Wasteful, even. You're using 10 times the materials we would need for the same purpose." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Minho tried to explain. "On Earth, we have significant gravitational force. We also have weather patterns that generate high winds, seismic activity that creates ground movement, and various other environmental factors. Our engineering accounts for these realities." "But surely," another delegate interrupted, "there are more efficient solutions? These designs appear primitive, crude, like something from our own pre-industrial eras." More murmurs. Yuna felt her hands clench into fists under the table. Soman stood up from the Earth section. "If I may address the Council," she said, her voice calm despite the tension in her shoulders. "Our homeworld has shaped us differently than it has shaped you. What you call excessive, we call necessary. What you see as crude, we understand as reliable. Our engineering reflects our environment." "Perhaps," Velkoth said slowly, "but it also reflects your limitations. Your species has not yet learned the elegance that comes with advanced civilization. You are still building like barbarians who fear their own planet." The room erupted in sounds that the translator marked as laughter and agreement. Not everyone joined in, but enough did that the message was clear. Earth's technology was considered primitive, backwards, a curiosity at best, an embarrassment at worst. Minho returned to his seat, his face carefully neutral. Yuna could see the hurt in his eyes. He had spent months preparing this presentation. He had been so proud of humanity's achievements in engineering, and the entire galactic community had just dismissed it as crude and wasteful. The demonstration session continued with other species, but Yuna barely paid attention. She was too angry. These aliens had no idea what they were talking about. They lived in their gentle worlds with their delicate structures, and they thought that made them superior. They had never had to build something that could survive a hurricane. They had never had to design a building that wouldn't collapse in an earthquake. They had never had to consider that falling objects could kill. That evening, all the human delegates gathered in the Earth quarters. It was the only place they could speak freely, the only place where the gravity felt right and they didn't have to worry about breaking things or being laughed at. "That was a disaster," Minho said, slumped in his chair. "They think we're primitives." "They do," Hiren agreed. She looked older than she had a week ago. "The official reports are already coming in. Earth technology has been classified as non-competitive. Several delegates have suggested that our best contribution to the Council might be as laborers rather than scientific partners." "Laborers," Soman repeated, her voice flat. "Because we're strong. Because we can lift things they can't." "It's not fair," said Dr. Yunji Bei, the material scientist who had helped prepare the demonstration. "Our engineering is brilliant. It has to be, to survive on Earth. They just don't understand the challenges we face." Jaewon, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Then we should show them. Not with presentations, with an actual demonstration. Let them see what Earth gravity really means." Hiren shook her head. "We can't afford to be aggressive. If we push too hard, we risk losing everything Earth has worked for." "It wouldn't be aggressive," Yuna said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "It would be educational." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her pen. the simple ballpoint pen she carried everywhere. She held it up so everyone could see. They laugh at our engineering because they've never experienced our gravity, Yuna continued. They think we overbuild because we're primitive. But what if we could show them, in a way they can't dismiss or ignore, exactly why we build the way we do? What are you thinking? Somin asked. Yuna looked at the pen in her hand. On Earth it was nothing. A cheap piece of plastic that weighed a few grams. But she had been thinking about mass and acceleration. About force and impact. About what happened when objects fell in real gravity. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that we should challenge them to a materials test. Their best structural composites against our standard construction materials. Simple stress tests. Scientific and objective. They'll just say their materials are better because they're lighter, Minho pointed out. Maybe, Yuna agreed, but I want to add one more test. One they won't expect. She explained her idea. The room was quiet as she talked, but slowly smiles began to appear on the faces around her. That's brilliant, Yunji said, and it's not aggressive. It's just physics. It's also risky, Hiran warned. If something goes wrong, if someone gets hurt, Earth will be blamed. Then we'll be very careful, Yuna replied. But we can't keep letting them think we're primitives. We need to show them the truth. Not with anger, not with threats, just with a simple demonstration of what Earth gravity really means. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Hiran sighed. All right. I'll request a meeting with the science committee, but you'd better be right about this, Yuna. We only get one chance. Yuna looked down at the pen in her hand. Such a small thing. Such a simple thing. But in the right circumstances, it could change everything. The science committee meeting room was smaller than the main council chamber, but somehow more intimidating. 7 of the most brilliant scientific minds in the galaxy sat in a semicircle, all of them watching Yuna with expressions that ranged from curious to annoyed. Korthan, the head of the committee, gestured with one of his forearms for Yuna to begin. He was from a high-gravity world by galactic standards, which meant his planet had about half of Earth's gravity. He was shorter than most aliens on the station and had a stockier build, but he was still thin and delicate compared to any human. Yuna stood in the center of the room, very aware that she was being judged. She held her pen in one hand, trying not to grip it too tightly. Thank you for meeting with me, she began. I know your time is valuable. We are curious, Korthan said. His translator gave his voice a patient, slightly patronizing tone. Your request was unusual. A materials science demonstration specifically comparing Earth and galactic construction materials. Yes, Yuna replied. I understand that our engineering has been classified as primitive and inefficient. I would like the opportunity to demonstrate why we build the way we do. One of the other committee members, a floating entity that looked like a cloud of glowing particles, made a sound that translated as skeptical interest. We have already seen your demonstration. Heavy materials. Crude construction. What more is there to show? Context, Yuna said simply. You have judged our engineering based on your experience, but you have never experienced the forces our engineering is designed to withstand. I believe a direct comparison would be enlightening for both our civilizations. Velkoth, who had criticized the human presentation earlier, was also on the committee. He leaned back in his chair, which creaked slightly even under his minimal weight. You wish to prove that heavier is better? This seems pointless. Efficiency is what matters in modern engineering. I'm not trying to prove that heavier is better, Yuna said carefully. I'm trying to demonstrate that different environments require different solutions. What you call inefficient, we call appropriate for our needs. Korthan tilted his head, studying her. What exactly are you proposing? A simple test. We each provide a sample of standard structural flooring material, the kind used in normal buildings on our respective worlds. We subject both samples to various stress tests to measure their properties. Completely objective, completely scientific. The committee members looked at each other. Silent communication passed between them in ways Yuna couldn't interpret. Finally, Korthan nodded. This seems reasonable. We accept your proposal. The demonstration will be held tomorrow in the main demonstration hall. Is this acceptable? Very acceptable, Yuna agreed. Thank you for your consideration. As she turned to leave, Velkoth called out, This will change nothing, you understand? When our materials prove superior, it will only confirm what we already know. Earth engineering is primitive. Yuna looked back at him. She allowed herself a small smile. Then you have nothing to lose by agreeing to the demonstration. She left the room before they could see how nervous she really was. The next day arrived too quickly. Word had spread through the station about the materials test, and what was supposed to be a small scientific comparison had turned into an event. The demonstration hall was packed. Delegates from dozens of species had come to watch, most of them expecting to see the humans embarrassed once again. Una stood backstage with the rest of the Earth delegation. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Are you sure about this?" Hiren asked for the 10th time. "No," Una admitted, "but we have to try." Minho was checking the equipment they had brought. The gravity generator, officially listed as technology for maintaining Earth normal gravity in human quarters, sat in a reinforced case. "Everything is ready," he said. "The field is calibrated and stable. It will work." "It has to work," Somin added. She was there in her military capacity, officially to ensure safety protocols were followed, unofficially to make sure nothing went catastrophically wrong. They walked onto the stage together. The hall went quiet as humans entered. Una could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching them, waiting for another failure, another moment of clumsiness to mock. The stage had been prepared according to specifications. 2 elevated platforms, each designed to hold a single floor panel, various testing equipment arranged around them, and in the center, Corthan and 3 other committee members who would oversee the test. The alien panel was installed first. It was beautiful, a composite material that seemed to shimmer with rainbow colors. Thin and light, it looked like it might blow away if someone breathed on it too hard. But Corthan explained that it was woven at the molecular level, incredibly strong for its weight, resistant to stress and temperature changes. Then the Earth panel was installed. Reinforced concrete with titanium rebar mesh, standard material for any high-traffic floor on Earth. Next to the elegant alien composite, it looked exactly like what the aliens expected. Crude, heavy, primitive. There were some chuckles from the audience. Una heard someone whisper, "Like rocks held together with mud." More laughter. The testing began. Yunji operated the equipment while Corthan monitored the readings. First pressure test. Both panels held up well. The alien composite was more flexible, distributing pressure across its surface. The concrete was more rigid but equally strong. Next, thermal stress. The panels were heated and cooled rapidly. The alien material actually performed slightly better here, maintaining its integrity through wider temperature ranges. There were pleased sounds from the alien delegates. Then torque tests, measuring how the materials responded to twisting forces. Again, both performed well within acceptable parameters. The alien composite had advantages in some areas. The concrete had advantages in others. So far, everything was about what everyone expected. Corthan turned to the audience. "As you can see, both materials have their merits. The human sample is adequate for its purpose, though we maintain that more efficient solutions exist." He looked at Una. "Was there anything else you wished to demonstrate?" This was the moment. Una stepped forward, her pen in her hand. "Yes, one more test, if I may." The hall went quiet. Una walked to the alien panel, holding the pen at shoulder height. Her hands were steady now. All the nervousness had transformed into focus. "On Earth," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, "we have a saying. What goes up must come down. On your worlds, in your gentle gravity, objects fall slowly. Softly, you barely notice it." She held the pen where everyone could see. "This pen weighs about 11 grams on Earth. Here, in the station's 0.4 gravity, it weighs perhaps 3 or 4 grams. But mass doesn't change with gravity. The pen's mass is the same everywhere." She looked out at the audience. On Earth, falling objects accelerate at 9.8 meters per second squared. Every second they fall, they get faster and faster. This is normal to us. We experience it every moment of our lives, but I don't think most of you have ever experienced true freefall in strong gravity. She dropped the pen. In the station's low gravity, it drifted downward like a leaf, slow and gentle. It touched the alien composite panel with a soft click and bounced slightly. Nothing happened. The panel didn't even vibrate. The audience murmured in confusion. Some laughed. Was this the big demonstration? Dropping a pen, Una picked up the pen and walked to the Earth panel. "This," she said quietly, "is Earth gravity." J1, standing at the control station, activated the gravity generator. The field spread out, encompassing the Earth panel and a 3-meter radius around it. Una felt the familiar pull of home as she stepped into the field. She stood up straighter. Her movements became more sure. But around the hall, aliens gasped and moved back. Those sitting closest to the stage stood up and retreated several rows. Even through the edge of the gravity field, they could feel the difference. It pressed on them like a physical weight, frightening and uncomfortable. Una held the pen at the same shoulder height. "This is what we live with," she said. "Every day, every second. This is what our engineering is designed to handle." She dropped the pen. It fell, really fell. The way things were supposed to fall, quick and hard and real. In the fraction of a second it took to travel 1 meter, it accelerated to nearly 4.5 meters per second. The impact against the concrete was sharp and loud, like a small crack of thunder. The hall was completely silent. The pen had hit hard enough that it bounced, clattering against the concrete a second time before rolling to a stop. The concrete panel didn't have a scratch on it, but the sound of that impact had startled every alien in the room. Una picked up the pen. It was slightly deformed now, bent from the force of impact. She held it up so everyone could see. Then she walked back toward the alien panel. "May I?" she asked Corthan. He was staring at the pen in her hand, at the concrete panel. His expression was difficult to read, but his hands were shaking slightly. Yes, proceed." Jaywin adjusted the gravity generator. The field moved, now encompassing the alien composite panel instead. The gravity field settled over the alien panel like a heavy blanket. Una could see some of the closer delegates physically struggling with the increased gravity, their bodies not designed to handle even this level of force. Security personnel moved forward, ready to assist anyone who needed to leave the area. Una needed a ladder to reach proper height under full Earth gravity. Even that simple act drew gasps from the audience. She climbed up 2 meters, careful and steady. At the top, she held out the pen so everyone could see it clearly. The hall was so quiet she could hear the hum of the gravity generator. Every alien eye was locked on that simple pen in her hand. "We don't engineer for efficiency alone," Una said, her voice steady and clear. "We engineer for survival. Every building on Earth, every floor, every structure must withstand forces like this. Not once in a while. Not in emergencies. Every single moment of every single day." She looked out at the audience, at their thin bodies and delicate frames, at the fear in their eyes as they felt just the edge of Earth's gravity, at the way some of them were holding onto their chairs just to stay upright. "This is our normal," she continued. "This is what shaped us. This is why we build the way we do." She opened her hand. The pen fell. 2 meters in Earth gravity, accelerating faster with every fraction of a second. By the time it reached the panel, it was traveling at over 6 meters per second, a small object moving at the speed of a running human. The impact was violent. The sound was like an explosion in the quiet hall. Sharp and brutal and shocking, the pen hit the alien composite and punched straight through it. The beautiful rainbow material shattered like glass, fragments flying outward in a spray of broken pieces. The pen continued through, hit the secondary safety platform below with another crack, and finally came to rest, having left destruction in its wake. The hall erupted. Aliens screamed and shouted and made sounds of alarm that the translators couldn't keep up with. Some delegates ran for the exits. Others huddled in their seats, covering their heads as if expecting more projectiles. The security teams rushed forward, checking for injuries, trying to restore order. But there were no injuries. No one had been in danger. The demonstration had been carefully controlled, the safety protocols perfect. The only thing that had been destroyed was a panel of composite material and one cheap ballpoint pen. It took several minutes for the chaos to calm down. Medical teams arrived and checked the delegates who had been closest to the gravity field. A few were shaken. One had fainted from the stress, but everyone was physically fine. The real damage was to their understanding of the universe. Corthan stood at the shattered panel, his forearms trembling as he picked up pieces of the composite. His voice was barely a whisper, but in the now silent hall everyone could hear it. "You live in this?" he asked. "Every day?" Una nodded. She stepped out of the gravity field and immediately felt the relief of the station's normal low gravity, but she knew that relief was temporary. Eventually, she would go back to Earth, back to the gravity that had made her what she was. "Every second," she confirmed. "When we walk, when we sit, when we sleep. Gravity never stops pulling. It never takes a break. It never gets easier, but..." "Children?" another committee member said. She was from a world with zero point 0.3 gravity. Your children? How do they survive? They fall, Soman spoke up. They fall a lot while learning to walk. From playground equipment, downstairs, off furniture. A fall that would kill most species here is just a scraped knee for a human child. We have to be durable. We have no choice. Velkoth had gone completely silent. He was staring at the destroyed panel, then at the humans, then back at the panel. His entire worldview was crumbling like the composite material. The science committee called an emergency session right there in the demonstration hall. They didn't want to wait. Couldn't wait. Everything they thought they knew about Earth had just been revealed as incomplete at best, completely wrong at worst. Explain your bone structure, Korthon demanded, but not unkindly. There was genuine curiosity in his voice now, tinged with something like awe. How do your skeletons not shatter under such forces? Yunji stepped forward with prepared data. She pulled up images on the hall's screens. Human bones compared to the bones of various alien species. Our bones are incredibly dense, she explained. They have to be. The constant stress of Earth's gravity makes them stronger. If a human spent too long in low gravity, their bones would actually weaken. It's a condition we have to manage carefully for long-term space travelers. And your muscles? Another scientist asked. The forces required to move in such gravity are enormous by your standards, Minho agreed. A human walking exerts forces with each step that would damage most species here. We develop dense muscle tissue, efficient cardiovascular systems, strong connective tissue. Everything about our biology is reinforced for survival in high gravity. The questions kept coming, faster and faster. How did blood circulation work against such gravity? How did humans build multi-story structures that didn't collapse under their own weight? How did they handle objects without crushing them? How did they develop fine motor control with such strong muscles? The Earth delegation answered every question. They showed data on human construction techniques, the necessity of foundations that went deep into the Earth, load-bearing walls that could support tons of weight above them, reinforcement systems that prevented catastrophic failure, safety margins that seemed absurd in low gravity, but were barely adequate on Earth. Someone carefully addressed the military implications. This is why Earth had no concept of hand-to-hand combat with weapons until we developed advanced metallurgy, she explained. A punch from an average human generates several hundred newtons of force, enough to damage most of the industrial equipment you use on this station. We don't mention this as a threat. We mention it so you understand why we are so careful with physical contact. She pulled up a video of human martial arts, but slowed down to half speed. This is a normal training session in human combat sports. These are not soldiers or warriors, just ordinary people exercising. Watch the impact forces. The video showed two humans sparring, punches that would seem slow and weak by human standards, but the aliens watching saw something else. They saw forces that could bend metal, impacts that could shatter their bones, movements that were, to them, frighteningly fast and impossibly powerful. The hall was completely silent except for Soman's narration. We learn from childhood to control our strength, to touch gently, to measure our force. It's not natural to us. We have to learn it consciously. That's why we seem clumsy in low gravity. We're fighting millions of years of evolution that taught us to push hard against strong resistance. One of the delegates stood up. He was from a species that looked like a collection of bubbles held together by surface tension. His voice through the translator was amazed and horrified. You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy and you didn't even know it. We're not dangerous, Una said firmly. We're adapted. There's a difference. We don't want to hurt anyone. We want to work with you, learn from you, be part of this community. But we need you to understand that we're not primitive or crude. We're survivors of a world that would kill most of you in minutes. Korthon was still holding pieces of the shattered composite. He looked at them, then at the humans, then at the concrete panel still sitting undamaged on its platform. We mocked your engineering, he said slowly. We called it wasteful and primitive. But it's not, is it? It's elegant, perfectly adapted to your needs. We design for 0.4 gravity. You design for more than twice that. Of course your structures need to be stronger. Yes, Minho said simply. And when you tried to explain this, we didn't listen. Korthon's voice carried shame now. We were so certain of our superiority, our advanced civilization, our efficient technology. We never considered that efficiency is relative to environment. Velkoth finally spoke. His voice was different now. missing all its earlier mockery. I called you barbarians. I said you were primitives who feared your own planet. He paused. I was wrong. You're not primitives. You're the most advanced survival engineers in the galaxy. You had to be. Your world gave you no choice. There was a long moment of silence. Then from somewhere in the back of the hall, someone started making a sound, a rhythmic clicking that the translator marked as applause. Another joined in. Then another. Within seconds, the entire hall was filled with the sounds of dozens of species showing respect and appreciation in their own ways. The humans stood on the stage, stunned. They had come here expecting another fight, another chance to prove themselves. They had gotten something better. Understanding. Una looked down at her bent pen, still lying among the fragments of the alien composite. Such a small thing, such a simple demonstration, but it had done what months of presentations and explanations could not. It had shown the truth in a way that couldn't be denied or dismissed. Chairman Prestor entered the hall, drawn by the commotion. He looked at the destroyed panel, at the humans on the stage, at the assembled delegates showing respect instead of mockery. I sense, he said carefully, that we may have underestimated our newest members. Significantly underestimated, Corthan agreed. He held up a piece of the shattered composite. The demonstration hall remained crowded long after the official test concluded. Delegates who had been ready to leave now pressed forward, asking questions, requesting data, wanting to understand more about Earth and its inhabitants. The humans found themselves surrounded by genuine curiosity, instead of mockery for the first time since arriving at the station. But not everyone was asking questions out of scientific interest. Station security had arrived in force, demanding to know why a weapon had been brought into a civilian demonstration. It took Soma nearly an hour to convince them that the pen was literally just a pen, a writing instrument, no different from the styluses and recording devices the aliens themselves carried. The fact that it could become destructive in high gravity was a property of physics, not intent. Eventually, the security chief, a methodical being named Torvan, had to concede the point. It's not a weapon in your hands, he said, studying the bent pen through a protective case. But in wrong hands with access to gravity manipulation, he trailed off, clearly considering security implications that hadn't existed before. All objects are potential weapons in Earth gravity, Jaewon pointed out. Rocks, tools, furniture, even food if it's dense enough. We don't think of them that way because we're used to it. But yes, you're right to be concerned about gravity manipulation technology. We'll cooperate fully with any new security protocols. That seemed to satisfy Torvan, though he confiscated the bent pen as evidence pending a full safety review. Una didn't mind. She had made her point. The pen had served its purpose. Over the next few days, everything changed. The science committee called for a full review of human engineering and biology. They wanted to understand everything. How humans managed thermal regulation under high-gravity stress. How blood pressure was maintained. How joints handled constant compression forces. How neural systems coordinated complex movements while fighting against such strong resistance. Yoonji found herself giving presentation after presentation, not to bored delegates who considered her work primitive, but to fascinated scientists who finally understood the sophistication behind human design. The reinforced concrete they had mocked wasn't crude, it was brilliant. A simple mixture that could be produced almost anywhere, that gained strength over time, that could be reinforced with basic metal, and that would last for centuries under forces that would destroy more exotic materials. Minho was equally busy. Engineering teams wanted to study human construction techniques. The concept of foundations suddenly made sense when you understood that buildings on Earth had to support not just their own weight, but their weight under constant high gravity. Redundant safety systems weren't wasteful when a failure could mean catastrophic collapse. Over-engineering wasn't a sign of primitive thinking. It was necessary caution on a world where physics was unforgiving. Even Soman found new respect in her role. The military attachés from other species, who had initially dismissed her as a ceremonial position, now wanted to understand human combat training, not to develop weapons but to understand the mentality of a species that had to carefully control immense physical power. The concept of martial arts, of deliberately learning to fight without weapons or tools, was fascinating to species who had never needed such things. But the real change happened in daily life on the station. Aliens who had laughed at human clumsiness now understood it differently. When Yuna accidentally walked too fast and had to catch herself, delegates nearby offered steadying hands instead of mocking looks. When Jaewon forgot himself and gripped a railing too hard, bending it slightly, the maintenance crew just shrugged and said they'd reinforce the human-accessible areas with stronger materials. The nickname changed. The heavy ones was still used sometimes, but the tone was different. Not mocking, almost affectionate. And a new name started spreading. Earth-forged. Beings shaped by the most demanding gravity well of any inhabited planet in the known galaxy. 3 weeks after the demonstration, Chairman Prestor called a special council session. The entire Earth delegation was asked to attend, which was unusual for such a new member species. Yuna walked into the council chamber with her colleagues, trying not to show her nervousness. The room was packed, every seat filled, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no laughter when Jaewon's chair creaked. No mockery when Soman had to carefully squeeze past other delegates. Just patient acceptance and understanding. Prestor called the session to order with his usual formal protocol. Then he surprised everyone by speaking in Korean, clearly having practiced the pronunciation. "Welcome, friends from Earth," he said, before switching back to Galactic Common. "We have a proposal to present to you." The screens around the chamber lit up with a new document. The Galactic Council wishes to formally establish the Earth Cultural and Environmental Exchange Program. This initiative has several goals. He outlined them one by one. First, human engineers would work with galactic scientists to develop construction techniques that could handle higher stress and forces. Many species were beginning to establish colonies on higher gravity worlds, and Earth's expertise was suddenly invaluable. Second, galactic efficiency experts would work with Earth to optimize systems that could benefit from lighter weight materials, where gravity wasn't a constraint. Spacecraft, orbital structures, equipment designed for low-gravity environments. Third, and most importantly, a comprehensive education program. Galactic citizens needed to understand environmental adaptation. Earth citizens needed to understand efficiency optimization. Both sides had something to teach and something to learn. "We were wrong about you," Prestor said simply. "We judged your engineering without understanding your environment. We mocked your strength without understanding its necessity. We dismissed your caution without recognizing its wisdom. This was our failure, not yours." Velkoth stood up from his seat. He looked at the Earth delegation, particularly at Yuna. "I wish to formally apologize. My statements about Earth engineering were made from ignorance. I called you primitives because I couldn't see past my own limited experience. Your demonstration taught me humility. It taught us all humility." Korthan was next. "The Science Committee has reviewed all available data on Earth. Your world is classified as a Class 4 death world. Out of over 3,000 inhabited planets in the known galaxy, only 17 have gravity exceeding 0.9 standard. Earth exceeds 1.0. You are literally living on one of the most hostile inhabited worlds in existence, and you've not just survived but thrived. This is extraordinary." More delegates stood to speak. Some offered partnerships. Some suggested joint research projects. One delegate from a species that breathed methane wanted to study how humans could possibly exercise and build muscle in such high gravity, hoping to apply the principles to their own low-gravity weakness. When it was Earth's turn to respond, Heron stood. But then she gestured to Yuna. "This was your idea. You should speak for us." Yuna walked to the central platform, her heart pounding. She looked out at the assembled delegates. Hundreds of alien beings from dozens of worlds, all watching her with respect instead of mockery. "It was overwhelming. Thank you," she began. "Earth accepts this proposal with gratitude. We came here hoping to be part of the galactic community. We wanted to learn from you, to grow, to contribute something meaningful. We didn't expect to teach, but we're honored to share what we know." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "The demonstration with the pen wasn't meant to frighten you. It was meant to show you something we sometimes forget ourselves. Our world is dangerous. It's harsh. It demands strength and resilience and careful engineering just to survive, but it also made us who we are. We learned to build strong because weak structures fall. We learned to cooperate because solitary humans don't survive for long. We learned to be careful with our strength because we had to live together in close quarters. Earth didn't just forge our bodies. It forged our society, our values, our entire way of thinking. But we also learned something here on this station. You showed us efficiency we'd never imagined, material science beyond our current capabilities. Energy systems we couldn't dream of building. Cooperation between species that seems miraculous to us. You have so much to teach us. Please don't think the demonstration meant we consider ourselves superior. We don't, we're just different, shaped by different forces. She looked down at her hands. Strong hands. Capable hands. Hands that could bend metal or cradle something fragile depending on need. We want to learn from you. And yes, we have things to teach. But more than anything, we want to be understood. Not as primitives, not as curiosities, just as people who came from a hard world and did the best we could. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then Prestor stood and made a gesture that Una had learned was a sign of deep respect. You are understood, Dr. Park, and welcomed. Truly welcomed. The vote on the exchange program was unanimous. Every single delegate approved. The Earth delegation would expand. Human engineers would join galactic teams. Alien scientists would visit Earth to study its challenges firsthand. Knowledge would flow both ways. That evening, Una stood alone in the observation deck. It had become her favorite place on the station. A quiet area where she could look out at the stars and think.